This is a video about compound sentences. But before we get to talking about compound sentences, we first have to talk about simple sentences. Now, simple sentences are sentences that consist of a single subject plus a verb combination. So, for example, I wanted a less stressful job. The verb in that sentence is wanted, and the subject is I, and the rest of that sentence completes the thought. Now, here's another simple sentence. I wanted a flexible schedule. Again, we've got wanted and I. Here's another simple sentence. The verb here is paid, and the subject is job. And then finally, we cut back our expenses. The verb there is cut, subject is we. So these are all simple sentences. And simple sentences are fine. You can write lots of simple sentences in your writing. But if you write too many simple sentences in a row, it starts to feel kind of boring. I wanted a less stressful job. I wanted a flexible schedule. The new job paid less. We cut back our expenses. So if you have a paragraph of just simple sentences, it makes your writing seem less elegant, sort of like you're not wearing nice enough clothes to the job interview. So one way to make your sentences more elegant is to combine them. And so let's say we wanted to combine these two sentences into one sentence. The first thing we'd want to think about is what is the relationship between those sentences? Well, the relationship here is actually a relationship of addition. It's just an additional thing that I want. So the way that we would combine these two sentences is with the word and. So now the first half of the sentence is no longer its own sentence. Instead, it's what we call an independent clause. And then the second half of the sentence is also an independent clause because they could both be their own sentence. An independent clause is simply a subject-verb combination that could stand alone as a simple sentence. And then these two sentences combined in this way is what we call a compound sentence, which is just a sentence that consists of two or more independent clauses. Now, one thing I'd have you take note of is this comma before the and. We'll come back to that. Now, if I wanted to combine these two sentences, I wanted a flexible schedule, the new job paid less. This isn't a relationship of addition. It's actually a relationship of what's called contrast. So instead of using and, the word that we use when we want to show contrast is but. So again, this is a compound sentence, and again, I have a comma. Now, in this case, the new job paid less, we cut back our expenses. Again, it's a different kind of relationship. It's not addition, it's not contrast, it's actually result. So in this case, the word that we would use to combine these two is so. Again, that's a compound sentence, and again, we have a comma. And these three words, and, but, and so, are all examples of what are called coordinating conjunctions. Now, the thing you have to worry about with fanboys is punctuation, because sometimes they need commas and sometimes they don't. So to illustrate this, here's a sentence that begins, for Valentine's Day, I went on a date with my wife and her sister. Now you get to this point of the sentence and you think, that's a little weird to go on a date with your wife and her sister on Valentine's Day. But the sentence isn't done yet. Watched the kids. So now that I've added that, you can see my wife and her sister don't actually belong together. In fact, they're part of two separate independent clauses. The way the sentence should be read is, for Valentine's Day, I went on a date with my wife, and her sister watched the kids. The way that you show your reader that so they don't get confused is you put a signpost in front of the and that signpost is a comma. So that brings us to our first index card. If you want to take notes on this, you can write fanboys at the top. And what you want to do is look for short conjunctions such as and, but, so, and or, and make sure they are preceded by commas if and only if they are separating independent clauses. So, for example, my sister lives in Colorado and loves to go camping. This and is not followed by an independent clause. Loves to go camping cannot be a sentence by itself. So this comma should be crossed out. On the other hand, if I wrote the sentence, my sister lives in Colorado and she loves to go camping, this and is separating independent clauses. My sister lives in Colorado could stand alone. She loves to go camping could also stand alone. So that comma is correct. So that brings us to another type of punctuation, which is semicolons. So if I take the same sentence, I wanted a less stressful job and I wanted a flexible schedule, I actually don't really need the and there because the connection between these two sentences is so obvious. So I can just take that and out. But if I take the and out, I can't put a comma in there because that would be a comma splice. And so the correct punctuation to put there is a semicolon. Now, the last thing we have to talk about is something called conjunctive adverbs. So these are fancy conjunctive words that can also be introductory words at the beginning of a sentence. So, for example, here I have the sentence, I wanted a less stressful job, and then a second sentence that begins, also, I wanted a flexible schedule. Now, also is an introductory word, so it actually should have a comma after it to tell the reader that that's an introductory word. And if I wanted to combine these two sentences, what I could do is get rid of the period and put in a semicolon, and now I have two separate independent clauses. And that's why when you use one of these fancy conjunctive words, you use a semicolon and a comma. Some of the common conjunctive adverbs are words like also, however, therefore, for example, on the other hand. And there's many more. If you Google conjunctive adverbs, you'll get a list of maybe 15 or 20 words. So that brings us to our second index card. You can write conjunctive adverbs at the top. And what you want to do is look for conjunctive adverbs such as also, however, or therefore, and make sure they are preceded by semicolons and followed by commas if they are separating independent clauses. So here's an example. I went to college instead of staying at my old job. Now, we have a conjunctive word there, instead, but is this separating independent clauses? I went to college, that could be a sentence, but of staying at my old job, that is not a sentence. So that word does not need any punctuation. On the other hand, this sentence, I didn't stay at that job, instead, I went to college, that is two independent clauses. I didn't stay at that job. I went to college. So instead does need the fancy punctuation. It needs a semicolon first and a comma after it.